What's up, everybody? My name is Del. This is Del on Movies. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you've been here before, thanks for hanging out with me again. It is that time again where I'm going to tell you everything that I watched in the previous month. This is December, so I'm going to tell you about everything that I watched in November. So let's just go ahead and get right to it. Get started with the 4th of November. So it was a few days before I watched the movie in November, and I started with No Hard Feelings. That's the J-Law movie where she, I guess we're going to call this her comeback because she hadn't been around in a while, comedy. And if you're familiar with it, she plays a young woman who's down on her luck, kind of, so to speak, having lots of problems, car getting repossessed. And she comes across an ad for by a wealthy family, and they're willing to pay her to date their son and bring him out of his shell, and that's what the whole movie's about. And it's actually a really funny movie, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. I wasn't sure if I would laugh at it. I knew it would be a lot of jokes, a lot of gags, and a lot of stupidity, but it worked. I thought the movie did a good job of it. 3.5 stars on No Hard Feelings. The next movie I watched was not as good, even though you can see here what I gave it. Well, let's talk about it. Hideout in the Sun. So if you're familiar with Doris Wishman, she was an exploitation director back in the day, back in the 50s, 60s, and maybe into the 70s, not really sure. She did a lot of what we call nudie cuties, and this is no different. The way to get nudity in a lot of movies before they, ended the code, ended the Hays Code, was they did it under the guise of education or educational movies. And in this case, we get a lot of movies that happen in nudist camps. So that's what happens here. We got a couple of bank robbers. They rob a bank and they flee to they take a girl hostage. Let's take that back. Before they flee, they take a girl hostage. And when they flee, they're looking for a place to go. And she lives at a nudist camp. And so they go there. And that's it. We're trying to figure out if the cops are going to catch up to him, or if if the girl falls in love with one of the bank robbers. And truth told, I mean, there's maybe 30 minutes of story here, and the rest is just random shots of either music playing or people just walking along and walking along in the nude. The funniest thing about these movies are what makes them so uh, almost wholesome, not wholesome really, I guess, because everybody's walking around in the nude. If you how you feel about that depends on you. But what makes them funny is we get all these shots of people uh, trying to hide their genitals. Actually, what actually happens, because there's no genitalia in these movies, so there's no full frontal male and or female. Actually, they're always holding something over their nether regions, and they get into some awkward positions to do that. And then you get, of course, you get all sorts of just uh, gratuitous shots of backsides and boobs, and it's an odd movie. It's a movie that watched today by a lot of people. One, it would be kind of boring because after about 10 minutes, it's like, oh, well, I've seen them now, but and they're not particularly well made, at least not Doris Wishman's movies. But there's a charm and a humor to that. So what I wind up with is 5 stars and a like, which means it's just so bad. It's a poorly made film, but it's a fun one to watch. Next movie was first movie of the month that I watched for Movie Swap. This was a big movie swap I did with Troy from Comic Book Movie Collector's Guide, and he had me watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure for the first time. I still haven't went back and watched the sequel yet. I do have the sequel. I have this movie in my collection, and I had a good time with it. 3 stars, good movie. The movie I had him watch was none other than Purple Rain, and it's a 4-star movie for me. And a lot of that 4 stars is nostalgia and my love for the music in the movie. The actual story, if we were going completely objective, when mixing the movie and the music, it'd probably be a 3 star, maybe a 3.5. But it's so enjoyable to me because that soundtrack is so enjoyable. I grew up with it. I have so many memories of that movie. That gets it to a 4. And yeah, you can hear Troy's thoughts on that episode as well. Next movie is called Some Nudity Required. And reading the synopsis of it is what really drew me into it. And I'm not going to read it all completely here. You can see it if you want to pause or anything. But Allie is this young lady here. She's our main character. She is an actress and she's an aspiring actress, and she gets bit parts here and there, but they're usually in the background. While the other girls that she sees at all the auditions, especially two girls in particular, they get all the parts because they're willing to take the tops off in all these little B movies that they're auditioning for. Well, finally one day she decides that, okay, I'm gonna do it too, and she's always considered herself a more serious actress before that, and so she finally does it, and she starts getting a lot more parts. Parts start rolling in. She's getting bigger parts, and she's figuring out that that's not really what she wants to do. At least that's what the synopsis said. During the movie, when you actually watch it, it doesn't quite go that route. So I gave it only 2 stars here because it doesn't quite do what it sets out to do. There's some enjoyable moments here. There's some funny scenes, and it does play with satire a lot on what it's like, or make fun of what it's like on a low budget set, which is ironic because this is a low budget movie. But in the end, the movie doesn't actually do what it sets out to do as far as our main character goes, and that's what drops it back to a 2. And there's too many spots where the movie just kind of drags along also. And not to mention the acting is just bad for the most part, but again, low budget movie, so I can excuse that somewhat and not penalize the movie for that. But still, only a 2-star movie. So this is I think it was a Tubi movie. There's nothing you need to rush out and see. Next, we got another pair of movies for Movie Swap. And we got Mack and Me right here, which was Derek of Convicted Cinephile. Derek, the Convicted Cinephile. He had me watch Mack and Me, and basically an E.T. ripoff. And if you've heard about the movie before, you've heard that. And then the movie I had him watch was a movie called The FP. In both cases, I'm going to say so bad they're awesome. So go watch that episode with Derek. It was really, really fun when we had a good time talking about these two masterpieces. All right, next movie. Pulled out the 4K of Shaft, and that I have the Criterion, and finally watched that version of it because I'd never seen that version before. Never seen it on 4K before. I'd seen the movie several times. It's always a 4-star movie for me. Depending on who you ask, this is the first or second blaxploitation movie, or not a blaxploitation movie at all. I tend to lean into that camp. You can go back a month or so and watch my movie swap with Big Chris from Floyd House Flicks, and we get into what's blaxploitation and what's not. And the movie itself, if you're not familiar with it, Shaft is basically a private eye, and he is hired by a local drug dealer, local big time bad guy, played by Moses Gunn, as you can see here. This is no picture. Oh, there he is. There's Moses Gunn, and he's a big time bad guy in the area. But he hires Shaft, who is dead set against any of his ways, to find out who kidnapped his daughter. And of course, it's not just a straightforward shot after that. There's lots of twists and turns. And I'm going with 4 stars for Shaft, always have. Of course, the iconic theme song by Isaac Hayes. Next is Sly, which is a documentary on Netflix about Sylvester Stallone. And if I'm not mistaken, he produced this documentary, or at least had something to do with it. And it's really just life and times of Sylvester Stallone. It was cool. I definitely a puff piece because of course he's involved in it. Nothing major really is revealed. We get to learn some things about the relationship between Stallone and his father. But all through every part of it, Sly comes out smelling like a rose, and that's to be expected with this kind of documentary. One weird thing, and I've mentioned this to David and Rich, Turn Fan 77, Rich, and 4K Lowdown, David. I watched it after they watched it, and Stallone is in the midst of moving, so he's got movers in his house, and they're putting things in boxes and carrying them out from time to time, and you see him walking around and kind of looking at things. This man has so many statues and busts of himself. It's ridiculous. It's creepy. to the because and just imagine if you know you walked into someone's house that you know, and everywhere you know you look there were two, three, four statues of them just all over the house. So that part was kind of weird and kind of funny, but the documentary itself, I don't knock it for that. Just 3 stars, enjoyable puff piece, nothing really spectacular there. The next movie is we go Insidious The Red Door. I am not a fan of the Insidious franchise. I didn't like the first one. Didn't like the second one. The third one was pretty good. And here we have Insidious The Red Door, and again, just not really good. We do get a lot of jump scares. The story here, Patrick Wilson plays, you know, our main guy, Josh. Him and his son from the first movie, who spent a lot of the movie almost like in a poltergeist position. He was trapped in there with the ghost in the first movie, and they had to try to get him out. So years later, we go in and you know they've put up mental blocks and all sorts of things, but now things are starting to come back and haunt them again. And I just think it wasn't very haunting, to be honest with you. Not very scary. Not lots of jump scares. The story doesn't do anything for me. So, but it wasn't terrible. So 2.5 stars, basically right down the middle. It was an okay time passer, I guess, for Insidious, The Red Door. The next movie was one a lot of people watch, and this one was The Killer, the latest movie from David Fincher, and this one was straight to Netflix. And it's one of those movies where the story, while you're watching the story, there's lots of intrigue there because it kind of draws you in. But I can understand where people might think that this movie drags. Uh, he's a hitman who botches a job, and then of course you know you've seen those kind of movies. Now everybody in the world is after him, and we get a lot of narration from Michael Fassbender's character, from the main character. We get a lot of narration. It's pretty good narration. I'm not a big fan of narration. If you've heard me speak about it before, you know that. But in this case, I thought it was pretty good because it's more geared towards giving us the internal thoughts of the character as opposed to telling us what's gonna happen or what just happened, which is what a lot of narration does. So it works in that manner, but I can see if you're looking for a movie about a hitman killing up a bunch of folks, he does get to do that, but the way it's paced here, it probably won't be what you're looking for. For me, like I said, I was drawn in, I was intrigued. The problem came at the very end. We get a very abrupt ending, and we're not really sure where we stand. So it's one of those movies that I've given it 3.5 stars here now, but I may go back and watch it again and be like, oh yeah, okay, well maybe I missed this or I missed that, and let's call it a 4-star movie. But it's going to take another viewing for that. So for right now, I'm happy with the 3.5. Another movie is with the 3.5 is The Fablemans. That was the next watch I had. This was Spielberg's movie from last year, 2022, and it's semi-biographical, semi-autobiographical about a young kid who discovers his love of filmmaking, but he also has lots of family turmoil going on. And for me, it's you'll hear this come up again a little bit later, but the main character is one of the least interesting characters to me. We're presented him with we're presented this child who has a love and a talent. He has a love for filmmaking and a talent for it, and we explore that over and over and over. We see him do these things, but he as a character, he does grow and change at the end, but it's not as interesting as what's happening with his parents in this movie, especially with Michelle Williams, who plays his mom. She gives an outstanding performance, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a lot surrounding her character. A lot of everything outside of filmmaking revolves around her character and what she does and her decisions. And Williams always gives a great performance, and I thought she was outstanding here. She's an underrated actress in my opinion. So definitely see it for that. And I thought if the movie had centered more on her, then it might be more interesting. But I also get that Spielberg wanted to focus on the child who was most like him. So we get the movie that we got. Not a bad movie at all. 3.5 stars. Still enjoyable. Still a good movie. I was just left wanting more from the mom and the dad. Paul Dano plays the dad, by the way. And Seth Rogen has an interesting role in here as well, as you can see some of these names down here. Um, so good movie, just not quite what I wanted by the time it was over. And it's hard to knock a movie for that, because really you got to judge the movie on what's there. And to justify that, I would say that the most interesting character in the movie was not the one the movie was about. So we got a character who was kind of a brat, kind of flat until very late in the movie, started to come around and become more of a well-rounded person. Next movie on the list was The Marvels. I went to the theater to watch The Marvels, and I've been hearing all this hate and vitriol for The Marvels, since the day it came out. And I knew that was going to be the case going in. Nevertheless, I had a good time watching this movie. I thought it was a really fun film. If you don't know the story, we get these three young ladies. As soon as that clears up, there we go. We got Miss Marvel here, Captain Marvel, and then we got Teyonah Parris's character, or Monica Rambeau, who doesn't have a superhero name in the Marvel universe. At least not in the MCU. In comic books, yes, of course. And they're all powered, and what they find out is that all their powers have something to do with light. But what they find out is when they use those powers, they suddenly switch places with each other, no matter where they are. So if Captain Marvel's somewhere on another planet and Miss Marvel uses her powers, they could switch places. So they have to deal with that, and of course you got to stop the bad guys. You know how this goes. This character here, Miss Marvel, really charming character. I really enjoyed her in the series, and that is Iman Vellani. I believe that's how you say her name. Let me pull it up bigger. Yes, Iman Vellani. And I thought she was just, she basically charmed my socks off in Miss Marvel, the TV series, and she did more of the same here in the movie. She's just an infectious personality, so I really enjoy her character and the way she plays her character. And it was nice juxtaposing her with Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, who is infamously standoffish and maybe arrogant, depending on who you ask. And so I thought the two of them worked together pretty well because of how polar opposite they were. And then, of course, we have Teyonah Parris, or Monica Rambeau, here in the middle as kind of a mediator. She also gives lots of exposition in the movie, which is a little bit of a problem, because something has to be explained, she explains it. That's pretty much her role. And the biggest problem with the movie, of course, for me, is Captain Marvel, and it's not because of Brie Larson. And I've maintained this since the Captain Marvel movie came out, the first one. The problem with this character is not Brie Larson. The problem is that the way the character is written does not allow the audience to get close to her. And that having Miss Marvel here softened that a bit. But not always. The other problems with the movie, of course, we get some iffy CGI here and there, but really it's another common MCU problem. Too much slapstick, too many times. Sometimes there's serious moments get undercut by we gotta insert a joke here. Overall, though, I did have a blast watching this movie. Not one of the greatest MCU movies, I get it, but 3.5 stars for me. The next movie I watched, and that was Quiz Lady. Quiz Lady was a very pleasant surprise, and it starts with the casting for this movie. We have our two characters here. We have Awkwafina, we have Sandra Oh. They play sisters, and Awkwafina is, I want to say frumpy. I almost don't want to say frumpy, but I guess frumpy would be the best word for her. She's a homebody, and she's also kind of a know-it-all. She's a bit of a genius, and she watches this quiz show every night. It's pretty much Jeopardy is what the show is, and she watches it every night and answers all the questions right all the time. And her sister, Sandra Oh, is completely opposite, free spirit, and in and out of town. Well, what happens is mom has gone missing, and they neither one of them really have a close relationship with mom, but mom is missing. Some bad guys have taken her, and they've they set up a ransom. So Aquafina and her sister now are trying to raise the money when they get the bright idea to, you know what, let's get on this show because you're such a whiz at this show. And it's rest of the movie, a lot of the rest of the movie is spent trying to get her on the show, to the show, and get mom back. What I said about the casting is why it works starting with the casting is because on the surface, when you read read the synopsis and you think about the character outlines here, Aquafina is probably who most people would cast in the role that Sandra Oh plays, and vice versa. Sandra Oh would be the one that's cast over here. But they did blah, sorry, but they did it the opposite way, and it really works. They did it the opposite way, and it really works. Aquafina, very subdued, and I like her in her subdued roles a lot more than I do in her when she's doing her shtick, and this is no exception. And Sandra is just a really good actress. She can do pretty much anything. 4 stars. I was, again, very pleasantly surprised about how well this movie worked. Next up is Vacation Friends 2. I watched Vacation Friends a couple years ago when it came out, and I didn't like that movie. But, I have a family, and my wife and my daughters, they did like this movie. So Vacation Friends 2 came out, and it was like, hey, we're watching Vacation Friends 2. I was like, okay, let's watch it. And it was really more of the same. I mean, they tried to change up the characters a little bit, and we got different motivations for the characters this time around. As we can see, this couple right here, we got Lil Rel Howery basically plays a guy who's trying to get his business off the ground. He's got a business, and it's actually successful, but he's trying to take it to the next level is what I should say. And she's really just his support system, his wife here, played by is that Yvonne Orji? Is that her name? Orji? I don't. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it the easy way. And yes, that's her, Yvonne Orji. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure, but she's his support system. And this couple with John Cena and his wife, played by Meredith Hagner, they're the free spirit couple, same as the first movie, except now they have a baby. So we get into all sorts of hijinks with this baby. The bottom line of it is, it just wasn't funny to me. So it's 1.5 stars. I mean, I had a couple moments here and there, but 1.5 stars for me on Vacation Friends 2. Next movie is this one called Best Christmas Ever. And I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into with this movie. And this is one of those ones where someone else in my house just started watching it, so I just started watching it. And as it says here, after a twist of fate brings their families together for Christmas, Charlotte sets out to prove her old friend Jackie's life is too good to be true. So what that really means is we got Heather Graham on this side with her husband, played by Jason Biggs. They're married, and life is not going too hot for them. But every year they get this Christmas card from Brandy's character, Brandy Norwood, her character, and her husband, played by Matt Cardello. I think that's how you say his name. Let me make sure. Matt Cedeno. God, I cannot read this small print. So Matt Cedeno, and I didn't know his name offhand. Their life for them is going great. They're fabulously rich and talk about all the jet setting and things that they do. Well, jealousy kicks in, and Heather Graham's character, who is Charlotte, decides that, you know what, this is fate. Their life can't be that good, and we're gonna prove it. So that's where the movie goes, and it's got its moments. It's got some fun times. It's got some ups and some downs, but in the end, it's kind of, generic run-of-the-mill Christmas movie. 2.5 stars is where that one gets. Is that what that one gets from me? Next movie is another documentary. This one's called It Ain't Over, And this is a documentary about New York Yankee baseball great Yogi Berra, one of the greatest catchers of all time. If you're a baseball fan, you know that. And this is all about his life. And the title comes from a famous saying of his. If you've ever heard the saying, "It ain't over till it's over," that saying has been attributed to Yogi Berra. The documentary does get into whether or not he actually said that and some of the other things that he's been credited with, because he's got lots of sayings that are called yogiisms, and it gets into that, but that's not what the documentary is about. The documentary is about him, the person, and all he had to go through to become an all-time great baseball player, and then all of the things he went through after his baseball career was over. And it was a really good time, especially if you're into baseball. If you're not into baseball, it is still, I would say, a good documentary, just to get to know the person, because good movies, good documentaries, they're not necessarily about the topic. Well, documentaries can often be about a topic, but they're often about people. In this case, it's about him, it's about Yogi Berra, and highly enjoyable for me. 4 stars. If you want to know what holds it back a little bit, it's all like Slice, a little bit of a puff piece. Though they get into some other things a little bit more, because the family's involved, but it's not Yogi himself. So who passed away. So that that there might be a little bit willing to let a few things go that wouldn't normally be, that the person themselves might not expose. Next movie is Polite Society. And this movie, we get these two young ladies here, and she thinks she has to well, let me just read it. Martial artist in training, Rhea Khan believes she must save her older sister Lena from her impending marriage. After enlisting the help of her friends, Rhea attempts to pull off the most ambitious of all wedding heists in the name of independence and sisterhood. So yeah, her sister is gonna get married. It's been an arranged marriage, but she doesn't quite trust what's happening and thinks that something nefarious is going on. So that's what she's trying to prove. And it's a fun movie. So it's a good fun time. Got lots of good fun fighting scenes also. And then we get into some supernatural things as the movie goes on. So it is a good time to watch. So 3 stars for me. And I have to say this because 3 stars sometimes sounds low depending on who you are, but 3 stars is basically 6 out of 10, which is, for me, is a pass, which is an enjoyable movie. So that's where I would go with Polite Society. Next movie I watched was Blue Beetle, and it's another movie that a lot of people had a lot of hate for, and then when I watched it, I didn't get the hate. It wasn't a world beater, but it was fun. It was a good movie. I had a good time watching it, and I really enjoyed the performance of our lead actor. As I'm not sure if it's Zolo or Cholo Mariduena, and please somebody correct me on that. But so I wasn't sure if it was I'm not sure how to say that, but I am sure that I did enjoy his performance in this. And I'm looking, as you see, there's not very many things here as far as prior experience, but he did a good job. Blue Beetle, la, 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 la. And yeah, I'm leaving all that in, guys. Get all my stutters, all my ohms, ahs, get all that stuff. All right, so Blue Beetle, he's just a normal guy, college kid. Well, he just got out of college and trying to figure out what his next step is in life. He's doing little odd jobs and happens to come across this or get saddled with this crazy technology. He doesn't know what it is, and then finds out that it's this suit that basically clings onto him and makes him a superhero. And I'm really oversimplifying that, but it's a fun time. So 3.5 stars for Blue Beetle. And that brings me to the next movie that I watched, which is Who's Watching Oliver. Well, it was 3.5, by the way, for Blue Beetle, if I didn't say that. Who's Watching Oliver is a movie. As you can see, it's 3.5 also, but this is a very different 3.5 because this is a weird, disturbing, disturbing movie. And so we got Oliver, who is he's kind of a loner, But we learn right away. We learn that he's a serial killer. And what he do is he gets these women who nobody's gonna look for, basically, or well, it doesn't really matter to him. But he tries to get them that nobody is gonna look for, and he takes them back to his place and he kills them and disposes of the body. Well, what makes it super duper weird on top of that is that his mom, who doesn't live with him, she FaceTimes him, or not even FaceTime. It's like Zoom call or something she's doing over there. They're talking over on his laptop. She can see his face, so it's like a Zoom call basically, or a live stream almost. But she watches him do this and encourages him to go out and get these women and kill them for her enjoyment. And then there's also a sexual gratification that comes with it for both of them. So it is a really weird movie. But if you want to see something crazy, something kind of demented, disturbing, this is that movie. Who's Watching Oliver? 3.5 stars. It is a low budget movie. The acting at time might not be the greatest, but it's passable. And like I said, if you just want to see something out there, Who's Watching Oliver is that recommendation for me. This is from 2018. I had never heard of this movie. Um, my daughter actually was just kind of scrolling looking for things to watch, and she's like, oh, that sounds interesting, and we watched it. And yeah, it was very interesting, that's for sure. I could see bumping it up to a 4 because it's so unique, so different. I don't know that I've seen many movies like this. Definitely a gory movie. Also, if you're adverse to gore, to that kind of thing, stay away from it. Next movie is Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham, and this is an animated DC movie, and this time we get, here as it says, Bruce Wayne accidentally unleashes an ancient evil and returns to Gotham after being away for 2 decades. Basically, Bruce is gone. He's not been in Gotham for all this time, and something's been unleashed. He unleashes something there from wherever he is, and it shows up in Gotham. So he has to go back and figure that out. And the thing is, we're set in I want to say 19th century, maybe even 18th century. Just going trying to think back in my memory, but I think it's 19th century Gotham. So it's not like current day Gotham, and it's not even like Batman the Animated Series where it's timeless kind of. It's got 40s Art Deco style, but it's really, you got 90s for that series, 90s technology. This is not that. So Batman doesn't have some of the crazy things that he has, now. But it's really a good watch, really fun one. 4 stars, and if you're not into the DC animated movies, then skip it. You know how that goes. Next movie was another DC animated film, Justice League War World, and in this one, this basically is an origin story for the Justice League. So I know the Justice League movies, the live action ones, kind of did that. Well, this one is in animated form. Where Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, they're really just meeting each other for the first time. Um, but what happens is, what happens is they're kind of taken over to this planet, and they've got to kind of fight each other, and bonds are formed, that kind of thing. So I won't really go into much more of it on that. For 3.5 stars for Justice League War World. Next movie is Justice Society World War II, and this one I had a really good time with. Also 3.5 stars for Justice Society. If you can't tell or didn't know, I'm a superhero fan, big superhero fan, and so you can take what I say about these movies with a grain of salt. So maybe I overrate them all, but 3.5 stars. And here we got Flash, our current day Flash. He does his old time warp thing and finds himself in the middle of World War II with the original versions of the Justice League, some of the Justice League characters anyway. And there is the Flash from World War II. And he's got to figure out how to help the Allies win World War II, and B, get back home. So, and they're called the Justice Society, not the Justice League anyway. Uh, so yeah, good time. 3.5 stars for Justice Society World War II. And so I was on an animated kick, as you can see. Next movie was Elemental, and actually, you know what? For Elemental, I've got it at 3.5. I'm tempted to knock it back to 3, and the reason is it's a retread is what it is. So yeah, it's this movie. We got water. We got, basically we got all these different races, or in the movie we have fire, we have water, as you can see, and we got air, I want to say earth, and is it wind? Earth and wind. No, air is that one. I'm not even going to try to remember all 5 of them, but anyway, we get this guy who's from the water species, and we get somebody from the fire species, and lo and behold, they fall in love. So it's a Romeo and Juliet kind of story, except using these different elements as stand-in for race. And it's pretty heavy-handed at times, and I get it, but it's got lots of fun stuff. The story moves along pretty good. So that's why I do have it up at 3.5 stars right now. But my problem again is it feels like a major retread of a movie that's not that old. I think Zootopia did everything this movie does better just a few years ago. The difference is this one focuses more on a love story than Zootopia does. So I guess we'll give it that. But in a world where interracial relationships have become increasingly more common, it feels like it's a bit dated in that sense. If this movie had came out, and this is 2023, if this movie had come out in 2013, okay, yeah, we can have that conversation. 2003, definitely. Any time before that, most certainly. Then it might be a groundbreaking moment, a groundbreaking cinematic moment. But in 2023, it comes off like it's just kind of chasing the trend. Because I turn on my TV right now, and almost every show has interracial couples on it. So that message has been delivered. So, but it's still an enjoyable watch. So again, 3.5 stars is where I have it. And now that I've talked myself through it, I'm probably gonna go down to I'm gonna go down to 3 on Elemental, I should say. Um, Usually I talk myself into liking these movies better. This one I've talked myself into liking it a little less. But let's move on. Next movie on the list is Sweetwater. Sweetwater is a movie I wanted to love. I wanted to love this movie. This is about, as you can see, Nat Sweetwater Clifton, who went on to play in the NBA, but he was one of the earliest members of the Harlem Globetrotters. And if you don't know who the Globetrotters are, I'm sure you've seen them. They wear their traveling basketball team. They wear the blue jersey, the red, white, and blue striped shorts, and they do all kinds of tricks on the basketball court. A lot of fun. I got to see the Globetrotters when I was a kid. Not Sweetwater wasn't playing with them by the time; he was long gone. But when I saw them, it was Curly Neal, and man, I just drew a serious blank on the main character, the leader of the Harlem Globetrotters at that time. So if I think of it, I'll come back to it. But anyway, Sweetwater Clifton was one of the earliest members. I can't remember if he was one of the original members or not, but he was definitely one of the earliest members. Globetrotters, a lot of people don't know, was started by a white guy, and the barnstorming team. And he has a lot of talent, and they were, Globetrotters weren't getting paid very much. So we basically follow him along on his path to get to the NBA. And we do it flashback style. It's one of those things where, early on we see the character and he kind of, well, let me tell you my story. And then we go through it all. And it was just really lackluster. It seemed to leave out a lot. And the budget also hurt. And And for a short movie, it's actually pretty short. Well, not really short. It's about 2 hours long, but a large portion of that 2 hours was focused on his very first game, and that seems okay. And the basketball choreography wasn't terrible, but that came at the cost of telling more story and getting and us getting to know the man better. And then on top of that, the low budget really sank the movie because it never seemed like the moment could possibly be too big for him. Okay, he plays for the New York Knicks when he finally does get to the NBA. I mean, I get that might be a little bit of a spoiler, but the Knicks, if you're a basketball fan, you know they play in Madison Square Garden. If you know anything about Madison Square Garden, it's huge. It's gigantic. It holds like 20,000 people. At least it did back then, like 18 to 20,000 people. I can't remember exactly. I've been to the Madison Square Garden. I've seen lots of games there, and if you just watch basketball, you've seen Madison Square Garden on TV. If you watch boxing, if you watched boxing in the 70s in particular, you saw Madison Square Garden, these huge arenas. You can listen to all sorts of performers talk about selling out Madison Square and how much of a notch in their belt that is because of how big it is, and on top of being in New York City. Madison Square Garden feels like a high school gym in this movie, or maybe a D3 college. So all of that worked against the movie. The acting was actually not bad. The acting wasn't bad. Carrie Elwes is here. Jeremy Piven is here. Eric Roberts is here. Jim Caviezel, Richard Dreyfuss. So we got a great cast. But it was a lot of, just pop in, say something for a lot of these guys or have very little roles. Our main guy who plays Sweetwater right here, Everett Osborne, it looks like it's his first thing he's ever been in. I would have to check his IMDb to be sure. He was okay. He wasn't great. He wasn't anything to write home about, but he wasn't bad either. So 2.5 stars for me for Sweetwater. Again, I wanted to love this movie a lot more because I grew up with the Globetrotters. I'm a big basketball fan. And so this all seemed right up my alley, and it just didn't quite work out. Next is a movie, the last movie I watched for November, and that is What She Wants for Christmas. It is the movie I was introduced to by the monkey for our movie swap a couple days ago. You can go check out that episode. The movie I had him watch is not until December. I actually didn't watch it until December, so I'm going to hold off on that one. But this one, What She Wants for Christmas, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for me. As you can see here, I just gave it 1 star. What happens is the main character for me was just she's a young girl who she was just too much of a brat, too much of a bully all at the same time, and not a very good actress. So that's all of that kind of worked against each other and worked against my enjoyment of the film. And the story goes, I'm not sure if you've been reading while I'm talking, but the story basically goes hasn't she hasn't seen her dad. She lives with a single mom right here, and she writes letters to Santa, and she has a special wish. And to get that wish this year, she decides that if she catches Santa in the house, she's going to kidnap him and keep him hostage till he decides to give her whatever her special gift is. And I've probably told you enough to figure out what that gift is. Santa shows up, she kidnaps him, and the movie goes from there. Again, aside from the main character, the entire cast, the acting was not so hot, except for this young lady who plays mom, and that is not her. That's Jackie Long, who I've seen in a few other things, and he kind of has a stick that he does all the time. That's dead. Where is she? Yeah, there she go. Lily Solange Hewitt. Nope, that's not. That's the best friend. Did they not put her up here? Did they not? What is happening here? Oh, there she is. Okay, Denise. I'm not sure if it's Bout. I'm not sure. But anyway, I've seen her in a few things, and she is a pretty good actress. And in this case, she had the most interesting character. So this goes back to another movie that I talked about a little bit earlier. And let's go down, make sure I find it. That was the best Christmas ever? No, it wasn't best Christmas ever. It was the Fablemans. There we go. So same problem that I had with the Fablemans. The movie was not about the most interesting character. And in this case, Mom was the most interesting character, and she has long stretches of the film where she's just not involved at all. And I thought it would have been better about her because she's the character who has to go through this whole crisis about Christmas spirit and all those things. And the story as it is poorly executed. So all of that adds up to this grade. Here again, you can get more of my thoughts on the movie if you watch that episode of Movie Swap. Plus, uh, Monkey's thoughts on the movie. I had him watch, and I'll let that cat out of the bag. I had him watch Bad Santa, and we had a really interesting conversation around both movies and around Monkey in general. So check that out. And that's all the movies that I have, guys. That's all the movies that I watched in November. So next month we'll do it all again. That'll be what I watched in December of 2024. 2023, it will be 2024 when that happens. Let me know if you've seen any of these movies and what you think of them. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Or do you think I'm just way off base? Did I give something a really high score that you hated? Did I give something a really low score that you loved? Just tell me all those things in the comment. Like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things. And if I don't see you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas. I do plan on seeing you. I do plan on releasing a couple more videos. But that's all I have for this one, guys. Bye.